It's time for your Talk Time Live exclusive.
You are now about to witness the strength of geek knowledge.
Folks, our next guest is looking to add another contender into the pro wrestling gaming world. Coming soon, the Aki-inspired wrestling game Ultra Pro Wrestling will be heading to consoles near you, courtesy of Hyperfocus Games. I have lead designer Sam Vallely here to tell us about this and more. Sam, welcome to Talk Time Live.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
So you guys are Scotland right now, and how's the weather up there?
It's actually not too bad. We're just kind of getting into our summer, I think. Hopefully, it's not too bad.
Awesome. That is good to hear. I mean, you're actually my first Scotland interview ever. Like, I feel like I'm reaching around the world. I feel like my podcast should have bumper stickers of where I've actually spoke to people at this point. It's pretty awesome to be able to reach out to you guys and learn from you guys. So it's a pleasure to have you here, especially when we're talking about one of my favorite subgenres, and that's wrestling games. So, upon finding out about this game and, me being one of many cult fans of the Aki era, or the N64 era, if you will, I was astonished to see that this project was going on and and the story behind it. So before we even talk about Ultra Pro Wrestling, I am very much intrigued about origin stories from indie game developers. A lot of stories stem from the people that I interviewed prior to. They usually stem from people working or previously employed by top tier game companies, or that they are, someone with a dream to do their own game of some sorts. Can you talk about how and why you became a game developer first?
Sure. I actually became a game developer because a couple of my friends got into that field. Mm-hmm. And I guess they kind of did really well. One of them now works for Rockstar. So I watched their kind of career path take off. And, before that, much of my life I'd spent actually such a big wrestling fan that up until I was about 20, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a wrestler. So so when that kind of all fell apart, and then I saw my friends take off with the video game stuff, that was when I decided that I wanted to do that. So I didn't necessarily get into it to do a wrestling game. I just wrestling and video games, I guess, were my two biggest passions.
Right.
But when I started doing video games, it was all Apple and Android mobile games.
Yeah.
I started off small, 2D type stuff, it just kind of grew.
So, in hindsight, like, do you have any programming experience prior to this, or any type of coding, skills of that sort that led you to say, like, I can do this? This is not a normal thing that people can just up and say.
So when I decided that I wanted to do it, and I guess with video games there are lots of different areas,
yes.
So you kind of don't know where to start. Like I say, one of my friends that now works for Rockstar, it was the programming route that he went. Another one of my friends, he ended up doing more 3D modeling art. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I did a little bit of programming in a college course, and that was something that I kind of took to a little bit, and I thought, maybe I should kind of hone my skills there. So I went back to college and did a computing course that was more geared towards the programming side. So I guess I'm primarily a programmer rather than an artist.
Right.
But
an artist in your own way.
Yeah. But, being an independent game developer, you do end up having to do pretty much everything yourself. So although I wouldn't say that I'm an expert with 3D modeling, especially when it comes to characters and faces and all that stuff, it is something that I've sort of forced myself to learn. So I guess I'm primarily a programmer, but I know a lot about 3D modeling, animation, creating assets with like Photoshop and Adobe Animate, all these kind of programs, and even video editing is stuff that I've played around with. I'm trying to think what other aspects there are with game development. It's all just there's so many different areas. The one area that I kind of struggle with is music. I'm just not very musically
I mean, yeah, all right. I'll give you a pass on that one. It's like that's a whole nother beast right there. Yeah. But respect, because from a graphic designer myself, I've done it for years. I've been a skilled professional for years. Working with clients and all this stuff. Respect to you, because the one thing that I took from that was that you forced yourself to learn, meaning that you took on a task that you weren't comfortable with possibly, but you wanted to do it because of your passion to do it. We need more of that. So definitely kudos to you on that one. So my reaction when I saw the trailer of the game ranged from intrigued to excited to blown away at the idea that you're paying homage to the Aki engine era legendary games like Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, which, like, if you were a hardcore N64 fan who used to buy imports back in the day and you're a wrestling fan, that's a no-brainer for you to get. And, the second one to me, which was the Japanese equivalent to No Mercy at the time, but a little bit more robust, like, you're excited as hell to know that there's a game that's going to try to mimic this experience, if you will. You started developing this game around 7 years ago, probably a little over 7 years ago now, with the intention of make it, based on a Scottish wrestling promotion that didn't turn out the way you wanted to, unfortunately. But what would you say? What would you have gained from making a game based on that wrestling promotion rather than doing it the way that you're doing it now?
What would I've gained? I guess initially I thought that because that Scottish promotion, they were actually kind of growing. They were in a stage where they were getting bigger and bigger. They actually put on a show that sold out an arena it was 5,000 tickets they sold for this big arena, which is that's not happened in the UK for a very long time. And so this company was getting bigger and bigger. They started getting some stars over from America. Some of the guys that they were developing ended up going off and working with WWE. So it just seemed like that company was becoming bigger and bigger.
It became a hotbed of your region. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again.
I said it became a hotbed for your region.
Yeah. There were quite a few guys that kind of passed through there that now even girls as well that are now in WWE. A couple of guys that are in TNA as well, or is it still called TNA? Impact Wrestling?
Right.
So,
it's tomato. We still, every once in a while, we still call it TNA.
Yeah. So no, it just seemed like it was kind of growing. The other thing as well is I was friends with a bunch of those guys, so it seemed like it would be a nice sort of partnership where I got to make a game for my friends, and also with the stars that they were attracting and the growth that they were getting, it seemed like it was a recipe for success.
I could kind of see how that would go about, because a successful wrestling game does help bring more notoriety to a wrestling promotion. Plus, it gives you credibility. So it would make sense to do something like that, and you would get full credit for helping to elevate. I mean, let's be real. Let's go back to WrestleMania 2000. I just had a conversation with one of the guys. I'm on this radio show with Sunday Night's Main Event in Canada, so every so often, and we had this quick conversation of whether how instrumental WrestleMania 2000 was to WWE during that time. And I have reason to believe that it really did make a big difference in terms of getting people more knowing about, at least especially the gaming community, more into that product during the Attitude Era. And people forget that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's something that I didn't really think about until recently, where doing these interviews, I ended up meeting a couple of people that I found out that basically they didn't watch WWE, but they knew a lot of the guys just from playing the games.
Exactly.
That's something that surprised me. But funnily enough, I sort of had a similar experience to that, because growing up, I was a big wrestling fan, but I primarily watched WWF. And so I knew I'd say I knew a lot of the WCW guys, but I didn't really pay attention to the lower level, mid-card sort of guys in WCW. But by playing Revenge and by playing WCW Culture, those games gave me so much more of an appreciation for WCW. So yeah, the game by itself does certainly bring an audience as well. And like with that company that I was working with, I thought, well, they're growing on their own. A video game can bring in that audience as well. So those two things combined, surely only good things can happen. And I don't know, for some reason I was kind of convinced that if I had to make up my own characters, if it was all fictional characters, then people just wouldn't really pay attention to it. People wouldn't be interested.
It would be more of a game. I can see it being more of a gamble, but at the same time, if the animation is good, if the gameplay is really good, and again, it's based on one of the most beloved engines of all time in terms of wrestling games, it's hard to pass up.
Yeah, well, that was the thought process that eventually convinced me just to go back to it and do it. I thought, well, the other thing is well, I love those games so much that even if no one else plays it, I want to make this game for me. And if it's a good representation of those old games, an updated version, a modern version, that's my dream game. So I thought, well, I'll go back to it. I'll do that. And as it turns out, of course, I'm not alone. a lot of people do want a modernized take on that game.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, game, that era, I mean, just amazing. And it still holds up. That's the crazy part. So the fact that you're having a little bit more visually polished version of that with the same, aspect, just awesome. We've been waiting for this type of thing for a long time. But what among the list of great games from that, great wrestling games, I should say, from the N64 era, did you love playing the most?
Well, at the time, I spent a lot of time playing Revenge, but I remember seeing like the magazines when WrestleMania 2000 was announced, and because I was so familiar with Revenge and that was my favorite game at the time, I remember seeing in the magazines all the images of like the WWF wrestlers, and of course I was a WWF fan, so taking that game engine. And I remember seeing like pictures of Kurt Angle and just these early pictures, and just being like, "Oh my god, this is going to be the best thing ever! Can't wait to get my hands on this."
Right.
So yeah, WrestleMania 2000 played. I mean, all of them. I guess I played for. I guess they were all my favorite games at one stage. But then, of course, No Mercy. I guess that was the last one with the most amount of content. So I probably ended up playing that one the most.
Have you played I'm probably a stupid question, but you have played Virtual Pro Wrestling 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, so actually 1 I don't think I've really played much. One
was their WrestleMania 2000, and they it was basically the same thing, but again, they Japan at the time normally would give us some good stuff and keep the great stuff with them. Virtual Pro Wrestling was one of those games.
Yeah, so, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, that was a game that I never had. I never got it like an import or anything like that. It wasn't for, years later where, and of course, I knew that there was an emulation of it. But again, it wasn't in English. So navigating the menu system was difficult. Eventually, I found the English patch. So I was able to then eventually play through it that way, and then of course discovering all the little subtle differences, like the MMA sort of lock up where it goes into the takedown. I remember just being blown away and being like, wow, there's so much more to this engine that I never knew. So Virtual Pro Wrestling, it's hard to say like what one's my favorite, because I really did spend so much more time playing the other ones. But Virtual Pro Wrestling just has all those other little details that I really like, so it's very hard to pick now what the favorite is.
See, permission to be a little bit jealous on the aspect that you used a patch to get the English translation of that. Rather, do you know how we had to do it back when it was out? I had to go on computer, print out these facts, these game facts, to get the translations and everything. And if we wanted to change the names to the names that they were, we had to do it manually. Yeah. I hate this era and I love this era at the same time because of stuff like that.
I was going to take a guess because there was actually another way of doing it, which I discovered. There was an app called WordLens that you could basically point your phone at the screen and it would translate in real time.
I do that now. I do that with some. I still buy imports to this day. I now use Google Translate to do all of that now. On the ones that doesn't already have English options to it, it's just like, all right, this is how we roll it now. Okay.
Yeah. No, I've got a friend actually recently, he was telling me he does that with the Yakuza games, because there's a Yakuza that's set in Japan that's not here. So he does that. He's got his iPad set up next to the TV.
It's tedious, but it's the love of the game.
Yeah, that's it.
So you guys put out a Kickstarter campaign, which superseded expectations, is safe to say, with the original goal being a little over 17,000, and quickly raised over 60,000 from over 1,000 backers. Were any of you surprised of this much support?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a weird one, because I obviously put out what the goal was, and we wouldn't have done the Kickstarter if we thought it was just going to be a complete failure. So I was very hopeful that there was enough people out there that would be interested. But I certainly didn't expect it to take off the way it did, because before we launched the Kickstarter, I'd been messaging loads of media outlets, places like Smack Talks and WrestleZone, and just all the biggest names with the biggest followers that I could find. And so I was thinking that it was going to take, if we were to be successful in any way, it was going to take for these guys to give us a lot of coverage. But that didn't happen until, it wasn't actually until like a couple of days before the Kickstarter ended that we got a video from Smack Talks. There was some interviews done with WrestleZone and a few other ones, but a lot of the bigger ones just they didn't give us any coverage. So I thought it was going to take to get coverage to get anywhere with the Kickstarter. But yeah, like I think it was 3 days in, we were up at like 13,000.
Yeah,
and that was purely just through the trailer being released on YouTube.
I think that's when I reached out to you. I think when I got connected from YouTube and I saw it there, and I immediately started doing my research with you, and it was at that goal at the time. And then when I reached out to you and went back to that Kickstarter goal, it went like exponentially higher in like just a few, like less than a half hour. I'm like, holy crap. And I'm looking at the list of the things that you guys are offering. I'm like, okay, this is happening. This is happening. Hell yes, this is happening. I was like, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Here's a sub question to this. Cause I looked at some of the rings that you guys have, and I gotta ask, which one of you, or all of you, which one of you are hardcore Ring of Honor fans?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I don't know if I'd call myself a hardcore Ring of Honor fan, only because I've not seen as much of Ring of Honor as other people who would be considered hardcore fans. I really like Ring of Honor, but I've just not seen enough of it to call myself a hardcore fan.
I think you're hardcore enough, because one of the rings that you have is called House of Honor. As a person from Philadelphia who is born into the era of honor, I recognize that ring is the old school half two-tone ring, which used to be red and black, and it had the Ring of Honor logo in the middle. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I recognize that on the spot. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, we obviously had to do an independent promotion, and of course, like I'd say my biggest independent promotion that I was in love with for years was ECW. But then it's kind of, well, there you go, Philadelphia. So, but it's hard to kind of sort of project that in a unique, because I wanted the ring to look different from the other rings as well.
Yeah.
But ECW, if I was to try and make it look like that without any logos, it's just a kind of blue mat, black skirting. So,
can I say, as a person who's been to both ECW in the ECW arena and Ring of Honor at the Murphy Rec Center and then at the Armory, you made the right choice. Because the ECW arena at the time, which is now the 2300 arena, it looks nothing like it used to back then. So if you were trying to imitate that, I mean, Bingo Halls is a Bingo Hall. You did the right choice.
The other one for ECW would be the Hammerstein Ballroom.
In New York, yeah.
That would be a nightmare to try and model that just and coming up to the trailer. So that's something that I'll hopefully be able to make a version of eventually. But but yeah, for the trailer, we were trying to do basic, like easy ones, basically.
Whose idea was it to do the trailer in the fashion of Virtual Pro Wrestling 2?
So yeah, that was my idea, and it was basically, out of trying to make it easy, because we'd sort of storyboarded lots of different ideas for what the trailer could look like, because when the game launches, the first chapter of the story mode is going to be the 80s. So we were theorizing about having, a sort of maybe a Hulk Hogan prototype and a Roddy Piper prototype, and that would be the trailer, would just be like one match kind of between these two guys.
Right.
But so it went through lots of different versions, but it was very hard to storyboard because you want the camera to pan a certain way, but then you don't want that shot to be next to another shot where it's panning the same way.
Yeah.
So just because it was such a struggle to storyboard that on paper, I actually just went and I thought, I'm going to storyboard this by using the intro footage from the from the game. So I got the WrestleMania 2000, Revenge, Virtual Pro Wrestling. I just got all those intros, and each scene I chopped it up, and then I basically put them in an order that I thought made sense and looked good.
Yeah.
So then I thought, right, okay, well now I've got my camera angles. Now I know where the camera should start, where it should end, and then I thought, do you know what? People will actually like that. People will see that as a sort of Easter egg as well. So that was it. Came out of just trying to find an easy way to do it. But yeah, no, I ended up being quite happy with the end result.
I don't think you're the only one. I saw, again, I think that might have helped the appeal. I think a lot of people who may be investing in this game with you guys are people who have that nostalgic feel, who've played that game back in the day. And trust me when I tell you, like, of all the Aki games that they came out with, that Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is the best one by far. Like, it is the Japanese equivalent to No Mercy, but it's full of it was filled with more, options, more features, more everything. The way you hold the belts, all that stuff. The presentation was just so much better in there. And people are, people in the States here are always into, No Mercy because that's what they played. But had they had the opportunity to play Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, I assure you that it would have been like a whole new ballgame, because adding the MMA element as well and having like the pancrase and all that stuff to it, it was an amazing game.
Yeah, and it was all those subtle things that I didn't realize were kind of missing from No Mercy. Like, when you're in a mount as well, you can push the strike button. You'll do
exactly.
You can change it up. Obviously, none of that mechanic just isn't in No Mercy. So, and obviously that's something that we're going to try and bring over to this game as well, is to have those more options for moves and situations.
Right.
But the good thing is, because AKI have already done that, we kind of have like this blueprint where we know what was sort of acceptable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun planning out like all the different ideas for, basically, because we want it to be true to the AKI games, but because we're thinking like the mount position's a good example of a position that's not in No Mercy. So we're sort of theorizing all these ideas of what positions, like maybe instead of just doing a suplex, maybe you get them in that sort of front face lock position, and from there you can change it to a suplex or DDT. It just opens it up. It gives you a lot more options. So that's definitely an influence that we're taking from AKI, especially because of Virtual Pro Wrestling 2.
Yeah.
In that mount position, that's kind of the justification for opening it up more.
Right. So, to many gamers growing up in the 90s like myself, any wrestling game created by Aki or THQ or published by THQ met with great joy in gameplay, as we are talking about throughout this whole entire interview so far. Anyone claiming to bring back that magic, however, is going to have a lot of intrigue and a little bit of skepticism along the way with it. Is there any pressure to meet those expectations?
Yeah, I think so, because the community that have been looking for this game, this spiritual successor to the AKI games, and I know this because I'm one of the people in that community. I feel like we've been burned so many times before. There was a TNA game. There was, AJ Styles had a moment where he was talking about, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is the best game ever. Like, this is the direction that we're going to go in with the TNA game. And of course, people get their hopes up. They start thinking this is going to be, well, even AEW Fight for Forever. They're, that's sort of another claim that it's going to be the spiritual successor, and it might be. They've obviously got people from AKI and THQ or Ukes or whatever it was that are actually working on that game.
Right.
There's certain things when I look at it, like from the gameplay perspective, and I read that they have a sort of a little bit of Here Comes the Pain influence in there as well.
Yeah.
So there's certain things where I see it and I go, that's not quite right. It's close, but there's something not right there.
Right.
So even I'm critical of any game that's coming out that's claiming that they're going to be the spiritual successor.
Right.
But yeah, we actually have Discord with like loads of people on there they're all basically going to keep me in check and make sure that I don't veer too far away from the goal, because the goal is
we want you to win.
Yeah.
If you win, we win.
Yeah, that's it. And of course, there's another guy as well that I should mention called Melon Bread. I don't know if you're aware of him on Twitter. He has this whole hashtag AKI Did You Know? Basically, he just goes into it's like he can sort of see under the hood. He knows all the mechanics of those games. He knows the actual numbers of the mechanics and all this stuff. So I always, anytime that a new idea comes up, where any new idea, we want to do it in an AKI-esque way. So Melon Bread's a guy that I often look to, and if there's anything come up where I don't know the answer, I'll go to him, because I know he knows. He knows what it should be to be like AKI. So yeah, I'd say we've got a community of people working together, making sure that we get it right. So that takes some of the pressure off.
Awesome. So this will be the second wrestling game, at least here in the US, to feature a 6-sided ring, which was something that we've only seen in the midway game, TNA Impact. Which was something that wasn't in Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. So this brings a little bit more intrigue to it. Since that ring plays a bit different than your normal traditional 4-sided ring, were there any challenges into making sure the flow of the rings works as fluent as the traditional?
Yeah, there is actually a couple of things that I didn't realize were going to be a pain in the neck. Running off the ropes is fine. The way that the rope mechanics all work, running off the ropes, getting in and out the ring. It took a little bit of programming actually so if you're in a 6-sided ring, when you run off the ropes, you actually kind of have to almost veer towards the middle of the other ropes in order for it to not, because if you run a 4-sided ring, you can run all day back and forward. But if you run off the 6-sided ring and your trajectory is one direction, as soon as you hit off the other side, next thing you know, you're clipping out and you're running into the turnbuckle. But we actually have all the running mechanics are all sound now. They all work well. The one thing that's a pain is corner moves. So if you get someone in the corner, the animation will. I realized this when we're doing it's actually in the trailer. There's a move where he sort of steps on the second rope and brings in the knee.
Yeah.
So in the 4-sided ring, when he steps on the rope, his foot is in a certain position. But in the 6-sided ring, the ropes are slightly away from you.
Yeah.
So his foot doesn't go into that position, so he needs to kind of be rotated towards that side. So that's a challenge for certain turnbuckle moves are going to have to be slightly different if you're inside the 6-sided ring, which means doing slightly different animations for a bunch of the turnbuckle moves. But it'll be worth it.
Yeah. So, and just for the record, you guys are bringing back the knockouts, right? Because that was one of the things I loved about Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Like, even if you're doing wrestling or if you're doing the MMA side, the knockouts just look so brutal.
Yeah.
They just crumble to the ground.
Yeah, one thing I loved about the, even before, this might have been in Virtual Pro Wrestling 1, actually, because I think that was basically identical to WCW World Tour.
Yes.
So they had Joe Bruiser.
Mm-hmm.
I used to love going in. Just it wasn't fair if you were against your friend because he could just knock you out very quickly. But there was something fun about just taking Joe Bruiser and beating up all the, going in Hulk Hogan, all the guys coming at you. You just knock them out like within 10 seconds.
And the sound effect too was even hilarious.
Yeah,
with that. Exactly. It sounded like it just a bunch of bricks just hit him. So, what other game modes or features from the N64 games are you most excited about bringing back to Ultimate Pro Wrestling for fans to enjoy?
One thing that I look forward to is, those games never had a referee.
That is right.
But they did have a guest referee match.
Mm-hmm.
So
No Mercy did, yeah.
Yeah. So and because they had that in the game, they actually have a ton of animations for what the referee would have done during countouts, during pins. So because the animations are there, and I wonder actually, I'm actually now trying to think if you can do a guest referee match with AI with the computer being the referee. I'm not sure if you can.
To my recollection, no. It was only a one player. It was like you had to be a one player because that was very new at the time.
Yeah, I think possibly.
And you could do fast counts, you could do slower counts or whatever, manipulate the situation however you wanted to.
So yeah, I guess it's a way of sort of looking at that and saying, all right, well now we know kind of what AKI games would have looked like had they had a referee.
Yeah.
So we can sort of look at that, study it, and bring that into Ultra Pro Wrestling and have the referee there in every match. So that changes like the whole. It changes the whole game, So
it really does. I mean, it didn't dawn on me until you actually said that. That's the one thing that was missing because I don't know. See, that was the crazy part about those games is that they had the ability to do, triple threat matches or, 3-way matches and 4-way matches, but they never thought about putting a referee in, at least for the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
But you're able to do, but from what I understand, you're doing more with this one. So like you're able to do multiple people in one. We're doing battle royals and stuff like that. So you're going to be able to implement a referee within the 6-man, tags or tag team matches as well, right?
Yeah. Hopefully, we've not fully tested, 10 guys in the ring with the referee and all the AI working seamlessly. But I have to believe that in this day and age with the modern technology nowadays, I mean, you see some of these video demonstrations of Unreal where you just get crowds of people. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. It's not something I can properly say just now because I've not been able to test it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you look at Wrestling Empire, M. Dickey's game, he has like 20 guys in the ring all at once, and it's all chaos. But so
I'm glad you said the word chaos, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. But when I see that, it makes me think like, wow, what would a No Mercy engine look like with 10 guys in the ring?
And with that, it's funny because I'm probably one of the rare people that is not a fan of that game. Only for the fact, here's the thing. I reckon M. Dickey, much respect to him because he did it himself.
Yeah.
But if he had like maybe three people like you had, or other developers had, that game could have been so much better.
Yeah,
I don't know. He's been doing it for decades, and it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I reckon he's in the same position as me a lot of the time. Where before I had the office as well, and before I had people people to help me, it's like I said, like I'm primarily a programmer, and everything else you kind of have to just try and pick up and do what you can when you can.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not easy. There's so many elements to video game development that yeah, it's not easy.
I'm sure they are, but he's gained to me, the way I see it, he's gained a fan base, a really hardcore cult fan base at this point. And you got to believe that like one or two people may be inspired to want to work with him to see what, like there's a lot of potential in that game. And it's just like, I've talked to indie developers who reach out to people and work to people. And I don't understand why he hasn't done it yet. I think he could have done an even better job than he has with having more people with him. Like he's constructed a really good template for himself with that game and trying to make it to what you guys are trying to do, but he's doing it all on his own. And again, credit to him for doing all that on his own at best.
Yeah, that's actually one thing that surprised me as well. With after we launched the Kickstarter, the amount of people that I've had reach out, and just obviously they love the AKI games, so they want this to be the best it can be. So we now have, like, for years this was me just on my own doing this. And we now have, there's a guy who manages our Discord server. There's a guy who's creating graphics for the menu system. There's a guy who's doing the menu system layout. We've just got a guy who's doing the fans. One of the Kickstarter thing is we had the super fan option, so people can send us their photos, and they're going to be actual fans in the game. So there's a guy who's working with us to texture them. So we've just had lots of people reach out and just say, we love this game. We want to we want to make it the best it can be, and all that stuff. So it's incredible.
I feel like I think what makes that problem happen is that the inability for people to be social and to reach out to other people, not being afraid to be, turned down, or not to be afraid to just, have situations where you're not going to get what you want, but you won't know until you reach out. And I think that a lot of people do that. Like, had that not be, we wouldn't be talking right now. I wouldn't have had the show. You wouldn't be able to do your game. Like, but if people start to become more social and network and reach out, and from a business aspect, things happen.
Yeah. And I'll just say as well, for anyone watching, if they have reached out, I know there's people that have messaged me and I've not had time to get back to them. So if there's anyone watching me that's messaged, and I've not got back to you yet, just give me some time, and I will.
Absolutely. And speaking of, like, talking about people who have, had developers before, I had Mike Herman. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's the lead developer for Retrosoft Games, which he's like in Collegeville. He's like a few miles away from me, but he's the lead developer for Retromania Wrestling, if you ever got a chance to check that game out.
Oh, yeah.
And he did the same thing. He had the same ambition as you did. He had the same throwback ambition. He wanted to create WrestleFest again. And he, to his credit, he did. He did a lot with that game. But, I had him on the show a couple years ago. And one of the biggest challenges that he had was making sure that the game was compliant with every single console requirement, especially Nintendo due to their Joy-Con schematics. What are some of the challenges that you are all facing, if any?
I think the online mode is going to be a challenge, because one thing we want to do is have it cross-platform, and that's something that I've not played around with. I've not experimented with the cross-platform mechanics. So
it's still new. Honestly, it's still fairly new.
Yeah.
To the point that, like, is it worth trying at the moment, like implementing that in the first stage of the development of that, or is it something that you think that you should wait on?
Oh no, I mean that is something that's going to come further down the line. We have a sort of checklist of things we have to go through, and the priority just now is getting the one-on-one demo finished.
Right.
So we do have a lot of time before we have to sort of worry about any of those other hurdles, but it's the online mode with the crossplay functionality, because what I don't want people to have to unlock costumes and wrestlers in one game. And
we call it the 2K. We call it the 2K thing.
No, it really hit me with Dragon Ball Fighters. I think I had that on the Switch for my son. We downloaded all the characters, and it was all like paid DLC for all the characters.
Yeah.
And and then I got it on PS4, and then I realized that, oh wait, yeah, we don't have any of those cards. We would need to buy them all again, and I was so
that sucks.
yeah. So I was like, no, if with Ultra Pro Wrestling, that's not happening. It would be if you bought the character, it's available across platform. So
that's awesome.
That
would be absolutely, that would be awesome. I think that's the reason why I just picked, like, because I have a PS5 and I have a Switch as well. And it's like, if I'm going to do this, and a Steam to that extent every once in a while, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to just point blank, just have it on one deal that I know I'm going to, work with, focus on the most. So, it just depends on the game or whatever. But yeah, crossplay, for data transfer and save data transfer, be awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, I sometimes take the Switch as well. If we travel somewhere, the Switch is a good handheld to take with you. And so I like to think about people that, maybe they play this game on their PS4 or their PS5, where, the graphics might be slightly upscaled.
Yeah.
But then in the morning when they're on the train going to work, they can just grab their Switch and they can just pick up and play the same game.
There you go.
So, yeah.
So, Sam, I want to thank you. First of all, I got two more questions for you, but I want to say thank you. I'm having a great time, and this is an awesome opportunity to learn about your company and your ambitions in this project. It's just been a great thing, and this is what makes the world go round. So, you guys have the destination date of August 2024, according to your Kickstarter page. With some of the work already in development or already developed prior to the campaign, what are the chances we could see this sooner? Not to jump the gun or anything.
Yeah, I guess, well, the biggest challenge is right now it's the animations. The animations take a long time to animate and to smooth out and to get right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that there's such a big delay on there. And, luckily with the Kickstarter, we got enough money that we can now fund the development of that. There is still some challenges with, if we need to, basically, if we were in a position where we had more money,
right,
we'd be able to hire more people, and we could get it quicker. But obviously, I think the last goal that we had, the last stretch goal, was £80,000.
Right,
and so yeah, the projections that we had were slightly based on if we were to hit that. So yeah, I still think that we can get it done by that time.
Right.
And the other thing is, as well, is we're actually still getting money through on like Patreon and stuff. So that's helping us justify hiring more people in the meantime.
Yeah.
The only thing is if we end up like if the money keeps going down basically, and we still have a chunk of time left or a chunk of animations left to do, that could cause some delays. But as of right now, we're in a good position. We're in a good position to, the one-on-one demo. If we focus on that first, I think we've sort of scheduled that for November. I think, but that's actually given us. Now,
just to clarify, November 2024.
Oh no, that's the one-on-one demo would be November this year.
Oh, awesome! That would be really awesome.
Yeah. I guess we just kind of have to track that and see if we hit that goal, which we should, because we've actually gave ourselves quite a bit of time. We hope it will be finished before November, but November's a kind of like just making sure we have that extra buffer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final question. And this is pertaining to the Nintendo Switch, because this is an area that, when it comes to wrestling games, it's been a bit of an issue here. Like, Nintendo Switch has struggled with having a definitive 3D wrestling title in its successful established library of games on the eShop. WWE 2K18, I shred even mentioning that, was considered the worst game on the Nintendo Switch for failing to create a stable port of the game on that platform. I still remember Seth Rollins just, trying to hype this thing up on that promo just to make it seem like he was playing it. I know he's not playing that game at all. He kayfabed that whole thing. But we have we've seen AEW, like we spoken just previously, to talk about that they were wanted to be the saviors of the Switch with Fight Forever coming soon, whenever that comes. While it is important to make sure that all of the games run greatly on all consoles, do you feel that it's even more important for you guys to make sure that it plays fluently on the Switch?
Yeah, the Switch is definitely important because, well, for one reason, this is an AKI sort of tribute game. And of course, AKI, they were made popular on the Nintendo. They were made popular on the N64.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nintendo's definitely something that we kind of need this game to be on. I think with the 2K games, it is a challenge for them to do their games on the Nintendo Switch because they focus so heavily on the realistic graphics. And that just, that it's difficult to take like a PS5 game that's really graphic intensive and port that to the Nintendo Switch. Luckily for us,
we say that, but here's the thing: NetherRealm Games successfully did it when they brought Mortal Kombat 11. Virtually the same thing, just toned down the graphics a little bit, made it look frame rate down just a bit, but they actually kept the frame rate up, but the graphics was kind of diluted a bit, and it worked. I mean, I think with Mortal Kombat, I'm not too familiar with the most recent game, but when you've only got two characters on the screen, you can scale down the graphics a little bit, and it's not too bad. With the WWE game, all those fans in the audience, the amount of features, the content, the ability to create your own characters, it is robust. It probably exploited the Nintendo Switch's capabilities too.
So I don't know. I think there is always ways to optimize and to scale down. And again, this is something that we'll be able to properly test closer to release. The other thing as well is the Switch. Supposedly there's a new Switch version coming out as well. So we're going to wait and see what happens with that, because if that's just an updated version of the Switch, then that will be the version that we'll probably release on. We'll probably try and have two, but we'll need to see what Nintendo come out with. But if it is upgraded and upscaled and everything, then it might make the whole process easier for us. There'll be less optimization required.
Would you hear? What rumors did you hear were promising to this? Because I'm wondering, like, as in terms of processing power, maybe, or.
I mean, I would imagine it would have to be like if they're going to do an upgraded version of the Switch. Because
the OLED is pretty damn good itself on its self right now.
Well, that's it. Their last update wasn't really an update in terms of processing. It was just screen expansion. Yeah. So I'm going to assume that this next update would be. I don't even know if it's going to be called the Switch. Like it might be like a whole new console.
God, it better not. I can't take going in lines again and traveling to New York and all that stuff again just to get this thing.
So I guess I don't know. We'll just see. We'll play it by ear. We'll see what happens when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you so very much. This has been awesome. I'm very excited about this game coming soon. And man, as a Switch owner myself, we desperately. I need that Wrestling on the Go experience, because if this comes off the way we want, this will be my main. Guaranteed.
I'll do my best to make that happen.
So thank you on behalf of yourself and all the teams up there, and we wish you the best. So before we head off, feel free to plug everything that's going on in your world, including this game, and let people know where they can find you.
I guess, I mean, we're now back into, we went through a whole promotion stage during the Kickstarter, but the Kickstarter's done now, so we don't really have anything to promote. If you want to help us, we do have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/Ultra Pro Wrestling. I think that's what it is. And if you want to follow us on social media, Twitter is probably the best place. That's where we have the most engagement. And we also have a Discord as well, which anyone's welcome to join. The link sometimes runs out, so if you want to be on the Discord, just send me a message, tweet at us, whatever, and we'll send you the link.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much. It's been awesome. Like I said, I wish you guys the best, and I'm looking forward to this game in next year. So we'll see.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
The heat is on for wrestling games these years. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Talk Time Live. On behalf of myself and Sam, all I gotta say is learn to let go, live life, and love all things anime, comics, movies, and games, and in this case, wrestling. This is ACMG Presents Talk Time Live. We are out of here. Take care and have a great day.